Video 3. Okay, guys. Back in the library module, we see the image that we had already edited in the develop module. I'm going to go ahead and bring that back into there. We covered the basics. We covered the black and white, if it's a black and white image. We covered detail, lens correction, in video number 2. Anything else? We will talk about the color grading, etc., a little more in depth at another time. What I do want you guys to pay attention to, up at the top, we're going to go to the next part, and that is going to be crop, right? The main thing you need to know about cropping. You can unlock that or lock that. It's probably easiest if you keep it unlocked, because that allows you to have a more free form crop. You'll notice as I grab the edges, I can move that around. I have more control over what I'm cropping. If it's locked, it is locked into a ratio. So if you don't understand that, don't worry. For the most part, what I want you guys to do is learn to crop within your camera, within the frame within the camera. Though, of course, if there's a sliver of something, like in this particular case, right, I don't mind that you need to crop that out. That's why this unlocked ratio is best, or this unlocked version is best. So once I have what I want, I can hit the return key and it will have cropped that part out. I can come back, right? If I like it or not, I can always do Command Z, etc. So that's just the next one in the section up here. Next, we're going to talk briefly about remove. So it looks like a little eraser, right? You can see that. Anytime you hover over anything, you are going to see what the function is. Right now, we're going to talk about the remove tool. This is kind of a pretty awesome thing that Adobe has continued to improve upon. They do use, or you can use now, generative AI. So depending on your how fast the computer you're using happens to be, right? That'll kind of limit you or not. So it works pretty well on mine. It probably works pretty well on the school computers, but that's something just to think about. Again, the remove the generative, using generative AI. Detect objects as well. So the size, again, I have this very first one. It kind of looks like an eraser. It's called remove. The size, as you watch it, is the size of the tool, right? So this is something you're just going to have to sort of play with. I'm going to use Command and plus to come in closer. And then I'm going to take that and I'm just playing with it. I don't really care about this, but I'm going to show you how it can be removed, right? And we're going to hit remove. So again, with the AI, it takes a little bit of time. Ta-da! It's gone. So I can come back here and I can show you what it looks like, right? So that's really helpful if you have smaller spots or parts that you are, it's just annoying and you want to get it out of the picture. I don't necessarily mind it being there in this particular picture. I like this contrast of this line. But let's say you're doing a portrait or something like that. I'm going to come back over and I'm going to do Command plus. Whoopsie. Command plus. I also can scroll around to get closer. You'll notice it's happening in the navigator. Command plus. Let's find, I don't know. None of these spots really bother me because it's concrete and I think it looks cool. But let's pretend like this is someone's skin and we don't want that there, right? So I'm going to come back over here to the right to my remove tool. If you remember the size, you can play with that. You don't always have to use the generative AI, but let's try it. You notice this comes up. I can add or subtract. Right now, I'm just going to hit remove. May take it a little bit of time, and then it removes. So that can be helpful for blemishes or spots that you don't want in your picture. I would say again, how much you can use it is determined on what size of the objects you want removed, as well as, you know, of course, getting in here closer to the hose, etc. Can be a little trickier. But that's a great use of that tool for now. That's what we're going to talk about with this third one. Again, I do not use the red eye correction. If you guys kind of remember, or if you've seen pictures when someone has a flash on their camera and they take a picture of a pet or a person, it reflects back on the retina, right, the back of the eye, and their eyes appear red. So if you really do have a situation like that, you can explore the red eye correction, but I find it's very rarely used. Last but not least is our masking. I'm just going to start talking about that because this photograph doesn't necessarily have a whole lot of easily identifiable subject, sky, or background. But masking, and if you know anything about Photoshop, you know about masks, but masking is basically this. All these other things that we did in our basic panel, right, is what we call global adjustments. It affected the entire image, or at the most, it affected certain colors of the image. With masking, it's what we call a targeted adjustment. Literally, you are masking or selecting, or you can think of it as kind of painting on a certain part of the image, and then you are able to adjust just that part of the image. You will notice over here, it's got subject, sky, and background. So that's helpful for other kind of photographs. You'll also see objects, brush, linear gradient, radial gradient, and range. So let's just select the brush for now. And when you select the brush, you will notice size comes up, right? You can change the size of the brush. Feather comes up, which is the softness versus the hard edge, right, of the brush. Flow, you can just keep it 100% until you kind of understand that more, and density is the same thing. But let's say I want a slightly smaller brush. Let's just brush. We'll brush around this part. You can change, again, the feather. When it's softer, it gives you a softer edge. When it's a harder edge, it's easier to get in closer to a more straight edge. That's not literally painting anything red, by the way. Masking is just indicated by the overlay, right? By the red. And you can change that color. It's very common for it to be red, however. So, great. Now I have that selected. Who cares? Well, now I can come down and I can change anything I want, right, from these sliders within that area that's selected. So I can turn that black, right? I can potentially change the color if it was a color photograph. I can do anything that I did globally, right, within these sliders, I can do to that specific spot. Now, I just did it sort of rough and tumble there, and I didn't necessarily get right up to the edge, but you can see how this would be helpful to, for example, add a little bit more light to a person's eyes, to help to balance out a photograph by increasing the exposure in just a little corner of the photograph, etc. It's something to play with. So I do not like that. It's kind of annoying. So I'm going to come back over to history, right? And I am going to go ahead and go back and not keep that. So let's go back to library. Let's go back to all photographs. I don't really have a great image here for, let's see, let's try this one. Maybe I'm going to select the one of me with my shoes. I'm going to come over to develop. I am going to start with basics. Already it feels a little too overexposed. You can tell here, right? It's smushed up against that wall. So I'm going to bring the exposure down just a tad. I like the color. I guess I could bring down, I don't know, the highlights a little bit. You see my white skin there. Texture I might increase. Now, this is a color one, so I want you to look at the saturation. If I increase saturation, I find sometimes students like that. That to me just kind of looks, I can just tell it's too much saturation, right? So let's back off on that. You can always increase it a little bit, right? Make my red shoes pop out against the green. Vibrance gives us a little bit more subtle effect. We talked about that. In the same thing, we'll go down to detail, increase the detail a little bit, increase the sharpening. I don't really want to crop it. I maybe, let's see. I maybe would decide, let's increase our brush. This is again the third one, the remove. Let's increase that. Maybe not too much. And let's see what it looks like if I get rid of that. Now, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So let's hit remove. Okay, I like it. So it sort of, it's content aware, right? It changed it, and we can look back and forth here. I'll come back to sharpening over here. There's the branch. There's the final result. I like it, so I'm going to keep that. I am now going to come to masking, right? And here's the thing. When you were using, this is also not a fabulous example, but we're going to go ahead and try. So this is the computer within, or the AI within the software. It should be able to select, if you have a person, a portrait, it's better about selecting the subject, etc., right? But let's go ahead and see what it does for this. It did it. Do you see what it did? It was able to locate that is the subject of my photograph, and it masked it just like I did prior. So now if I wanted to, I could increase that exposure a little bit or decrease it, make it a little darker, right? I could even, let's see. Change the texture, clarity, dehaze. See if there's anything else I want to do. You could potentially take out a lot of the saturation, kind of give you that selective color thing. I'm not a huge fan of that, so I'm not going to do that. I wouldn't do a whole lot to it, except maybe increase the contrast a little bit. Increase the exposure and increase the contrast, right? Help it pop out just a little bit from the green grass. But that was a good example. It was able to show you what it can do. So that is really it for now. I'm going to go back to library. Again, it's showing me the changes that I've done, right? You see the 2 images that I've done. And that will be it for video 3.